Good evening, students. Thanks for joining the encounter on time. Do you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, great. Well, we will discuss today some topics about neuroscience and neuroeducation, and that will be about the readings that you had last week. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so the readings that you had last week were about the parts of the brain that are in charge of memory and learning, and also some tips to call students' attention and promote creativity, as well as some information about how children learn, and few neuromyths that were listed on chapter 14. So we're going to start with the information about the parts of the brain that are in charge of memory and learning. Do you guys remember which are those?
The hippocampus, I think so.
Right, Rafael, the hippocampus and
Hypothalamus.
it was not mentioned there, but the hypothalamus is part of the emotional system or emotional brain.
Okay.
Oh, teacher, I think that they are hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, medial frontal rotation, left intraparietal sulcus. I don't know if it is the correct pronunciation. Parietal lobes, left frontal cortex, and neural cortical mechanisms of inhibition.
Exactly. So those are the parts, and the readings mention how they can get damaged. So do you remember what causes damages on those parts of the brain?
Damage.
Me, teacher?
Noemi?
Yes. As I remember in the reading, mm, the how they say, when the child is not growing in a good environment, and he's suffering for a bad style of life, when he has a not a when he has a environment a negative environment to him. For example, when his parents are attack him, or when he is suffering any kind of problem when the people is around, it causes that the child start to have a problem with memory.
Yes. So stress and
Yes.
atmosphere or an environment which is not safe for the child, which is not, the child doesn't feel affection, can cause
Yes.
a damage on those parts, and a damage on those parts has implications in memory and in learning.
Yes, teacher. And this moment I remember that there is an important point, and it is when the students feels a lot of anxiety, and maybe when they have to stay only into a classroom because the confinement is damaged in this case, because it's necessary that the student have the opportunity to learn in a free space outside the classroom, not only between four walls into a classroom. Another is in an adversity environment, or when maybe not only their parents but also their teachers punished a lot the students, not a physical but only a psychological way. That those are some damaged environments in this case.
Very good. So that's what the reading tells us. There on the slide, you can see the amygdala and the hippocampus, and what you mentioned in relation to emotions and cognition. So what you mentioned are causes of damages on those parts of the brain, and as you both mentioned, that a damage in those parts of the brain cause problems to memorize, to learn, um, to process information in the future. So why? Because those parts produce are in charge of producing an or hormone which is called cortisol. So when that hormone is produced, those parts are damaged. That's what a negative environment causes. That is the chemical reaction that is caused in the brain when a child is exposed to those type of negative environments.
I want to add something, teacher.
Sure, Nami.
That, for example, when we say that the child start to have a memory problems, it's not in the first years. He will have problems of memory in the for the whole time till the adolescence.
That's very
And
important.
yes, and we can repair a part of it because, but just if it is before the child arrived to have 4 years old. After that, the whole architecture of the brain of the child changed already, and we can have different treatments for that, but it will be very difficult to repair after 4 years.
Exactly. So that's why we have heard, um, probably you all have heard, that is very important the 7 first years of a child, because many things in the brain happen, many changes in the brain happen during those 7 years, and damages or um, a bad construction of the structures of the brain during those 7 years are going to cause serious consequences for the whole life. And as Noemi mentioned, after the first 4 years, it is more complex, more difficult to make changes to, let's say, fix those parts that are damaged. So what the book mentions is that there are some techniques to help children that have suffered from negative environments to recover those parts of the brain before they are 4 years old. After that age is more difficult. Liliana wrote, the anxiety of the students in the first time of the life can affect their memory. Exactly. Good. So Flor mentioned the fact that having learning experiences outside the classroom is very important. There are two important reasons, or two important, yes, let's say reasons for that claim. What are the reasons? Why is it important to have outside learning experiences, outdoor learning experiences? What happens exactly in the brain when we are in contact with nature, or we have physical contact with what we want to learn?
Well, teacher, I think that there are many important reasons, but one of them is because outside the classroom, the students have the opportunity to have a direct contact with the nature. And depending on the place, they can see different colors, shapes, and for them it's a pleasure to learn in a context different to the classroom because that context is full of sounds, colors, different forms, and of course for them all 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 of them is a game. It's a game for them, and they enjoy that kind of place to in order to learn many different things. Besides, mm, in the case of the teacher, we as a teacher have the opportunity to show the students in a different way, not only using the board, not only using the book or the worksheets, but also the different things by the nature, of course.
Okay, and what exactly happens in the brain when a person experiences pleasure?
Because the knowledge is direct to the brain. For example, it's better when you learn something through the example or through the the things that you can see, that you can touch, that you can smell is different when you have a direct contact, when you can touch everything is different when you only listen. For example, you listen, the teacher said that the nature is beautiful, that the tree is green, that we have different flowers with different colors. It's different when you listen that and when you have the opportunity to touch, to see, to smell, to have a direct contact with the different things.
Okay,
I
good.
think that they can register the information better in their brain when they can see the real environment. It's different if we as a teacher show them a video or show them a poster. It's different because the brain doesn't work the same in the same way if they can realize in the context. I
Okay.
remember the one of
Mhm.
the examples that said that in New York there are they don't have the opportunity to see the real environment. For instance, I there are some students that didn't see an animals and they just learn through the videos or through the posters because they can see in a real the real environment.
Exactly. Okay, thank you, Liliana. Sandra wrote, it is the way to activate the brain codes through curiosity and to open the attention to those open spaces. The contact with nature is important. Okay, somebody else wants to add something to that question?
Yes, me, teacher. As you're listening to me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Today I listened from the news that Rodolfo Ginas was speaking something about the education in Colombia. And he was speaking about that in Colombia the big problem is that the child doesn't remember what they learn because it's a big problem in the education method that didn't explain for what we learn something. So for that reason, if you don't know for what reason you need to learn it, and after you didn't use it, for sure you will forget it. So I think that in when we are applying and on where we are trying to find why the childs need to learn from outside outdoors is because the big point is in the motivation. We need to explain them for what they need the
The
for what they need
information.
to learn information and the big point is the motivation.
Exactly. So it is important that we explain what students can do with that information. So if they can classify it as important or not necessary. But if we explain it carefully, so they will find out more interesting to pay attention to that information. Do you guys remember the title of the book that you are reading? So the subtitle, because the title is Neuroeducation. What were the words, the sentence that was under that title? Nobody?
Teacher, that is just that we can learn. Only we can learn that we love.
Exactly. So the subtitle, what is telling us is that neuroscience have found out that when we feel pleasure, the parts of the brain that are in charge of memory and learning get active or activate. So that's why if uh, if we learn something outside, if we learn something through experience, if we find it interesting and we like it, so it is going to be an effective experience or a memorable experience. So we will learn it easily or easier than if we were in the classroom or if we didn't find out the importance of the information.
And I think, excuse me, teacher, I think that in this case, we have two purposes as a teacher. One is that the students learn, of course, any topic with a direct contact with the natural world. And the other is that she loves the nature. If the student has the opportunity to have a contact maybe with a river or a lake or any special animal, later it's easier for him or for her to understand why it's important to take care of the nature, because why it's important the water, why it's important to take care of any kind or any species of animal. I don't know. So I think, in my opinion, we should be two objectives in this case.
Exactly. And Liliana wrote something important, and is that since we like nature, the brain codes get active when we are in contact with nature. And why? Why? What's the reason people like nature, according to the reading?
May I try, teacher?
Yes, Arlie. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello. First of all, good evening, teacher. Well, uh, actually, students like learn about the experience they have with environment, with nature, and with everything they see and they touch because of the senses. Because uh, once someone tells them like to do something or gives them like a specific instruction, like memorize a word, something like that, they are not having like experience with the senses. So when they touch or they hear or they see something real and or something new, they want to try, they want to have experience or contact with environment. So once they have like that curiosity, through that curiosity, they want to learn why, or they want to learn about that new thing, and they use the senses in that process. So that's why they learn more like with those experiences, and not with like a specific content that someone tells them like to memorize something. So that's why they learn more about it, because of the curiosity they have with the environment and the experience they have with the senses.
Okay, thank you, Arlie. That's one reason, because we can experience through the senses what is around. And what is the other reason? The other reason is that the first experiences that humans had were with nature, and um, those first experiences were important for survival. Those experiences were important to live. So we have a code that is inherited in our brain. That's why when we have contact with nature, those brain codes get active or are activated because it is something that we inherited from the past experiences that first humans had with nature when what they did was important for them to survive. Okay, here we have other question. What does the book tell us about the way children learn?
How do children learn?
Well, teacher, according to the reading, it says that the children first learn from the environment and the world, the real world. When they get in contact with the real world, it is like their first teacher. And when they learn through the sensorial mechanism, they touch, they feel, they activate the emotional brain, and this learning goes to 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 their mind, yeah, and they process that kind of learning through this process, something like that.
Very good. So they go through a process of learning through their senses, right? Remember that during the first 7 ages, we are still in the process of developing most of the connections in the brain. And so we cannot think the same way as adults, as it is evident. And it is through perceptions, through sensations, that children can get information. What else does the book tell us about the way children learn?
Well, teacher, good night, everybody.
Hello, Chan.
I think that there are several issues involved in the way that how our children learn. In my experience as a mother, as a teacher, I can figure that sometimes they learn by discovering things. And you were talking about the contact with the environment and nature, and it's quite important because they relate sensations, feelings with their own experience, and this experience might be related to a significant learn, but also they can learn by not only for the sense, I mean that they have to figure and solve several problems in ways to make connections between the objects with their meanings.
Exactly.
Because I can show a book to my group and say, this is a book, so you can touch it, you take it for reading and all that things. But they have to figure, oh, well, the book can help me to do these things, or I can learn. So I think there are several things involved in the way our children learn.
You're right. Very good. Somebody else wants to add something to that answer?
Well, teacher, I think that there is a strong relationship between playing and learning, especially children, because when playing and learning outside also helps children to understand any topic, but especially understand and respect nature, the environment, the interdependence of humans, the life cycles, animals, plants, anyway. So it's very important to take into account that relationship, playing and learning.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else?
I want to add something, teacher,
No need.
that summarizing that for sure child start to learn more in between the 4 years of life. So a lot of countries start to invest in programs of children to teach children in that age to have a new generation of better students. So it is coming up in just in European countries, and it's a good idea to develop the country.
Exactly. So in developed countries, they have realized that helping children who have problems with their emotions to overcome them will be positive for the nation because when they get to be older, they will be more productive. So they invest money on children education. Then
Exactly.
Arley wrote, children relate the emotions that they feel with the experience, say if something is good or not. So, as it was mentioned by some classmates, so emotions are important for them and to perceive things, to feel, to experience through their senses, to discover, as Sharon mentioned. Remember that at before 7 years, before children are 7 years old, they are not conscious yet about everything they do. So they learn more in an unconscious way. That unconscious way of learning will be good for their future learning, for their future conscious learning. So if they are exposed to games, if they are exposed to uh, pleasure, to good experiences, they will learn. It is not that children can get everything, any information when they are uh, before they are 7. That if the information goes through their senses and they like it, they feel pleasure, they discover in the things. So that will be something that they will remember in the future. It is not if they don't like it, if they don't play, if they don't feel pleasure, the information won't be learned. Sandra wrote, children learn through the stimuli provided by the environment. That's something that is interesting and new to them. Is to awaken in them that curiosity to explore and feel pleasure in learning. Exactly. And Joanna wrote, children learn when they can experience.
I've noticed, teacher, that well, children are natural researchers. When they hear a noise and they are babies, they are always trying to look where the noise comes from, and until they don't know the source of the noise, they don't stop researching. So we as adults or teachers should not avoid them researching, and we sometimes make the mistake to tell them what to think or what to learn, but they are the ones who are in charge. They are the protagonists of the process. So I think we should uh, motivate them to research by their own means, or uh, for them to have the experience that they need to learn and to have pleasure and to enjoy it.
Exactly. So that's why some parents prefer to get their children to those places where they play a lot during the first years, and not those places where they get lots of information without playing. So games and playing is really, really important during the first years. Um, Somebody asked me once why children love songs or children learn through songs. They just like them. They just like to repeat the songs many times. And through that repetition, which is unconscious, they get an unconscious learning of the pronunciation of words, of the meaning of the songs. So songs are really a good source of uh, for teaching children that are 7 or less or under 7. Myra, okay, Joanna wrote, children learn through all their senses, tasting, touching, seeing, hearing, and smelling. Right.
Teacher, but I have a question. Mm,
Yes. What's the
are
question?
there specific games that stimulate more children than other games? For example, as a parent, how do I know if this game or the other helps more to my child or not?
Well, if you see that they like it, some children don't like some games. They prefer some than some games better than others. So it's just if they like them, if they like the games, if they like what they do, if they feel pleasure, that they will learn. If that doesn't happen, they won't. Even with adults, we see that games help adults to learn because games are usually pleasant for adults, adolescents, and children. So remember that all the information goes first through senses, and then it gets the first part it gets in the brain is the the brain, the emotional brain, which is the hippocampus, the amygdala, and other parts of the brain. That part of the brain classified it as good or bad, interesting or boring, pleasant or unpleasant. And if it is pleasant, then the information moves, or the information moves, or other parts of the brain related to memory and learning get active. So that is the process the information goes through. The first filter, let's say, is the emotions. If we like it, so it will move to memory and it will move to learning. It will be learned. So we see that not everything is important for everybody. Uh, Again, that's the reason why those methods that get students the freedom to research what they like are more effective because students get focused on what calls their attention, they research about it, and then they share their conclusions or what they found out. Not everybody likes everything, and I would guess that is the reason why we don't have bilingual people in our country. Not everybody likes uh, English. Not everybody finds it pleasant to learn that language. Some people like other languages. Some people haven't found the importance of learning English or a foreign language. So as far as they don't get the need, as far as people don't have the need or don't find it interesting or don't see it as something that causes them pleasure, the information is not going to be memorized and it's not going to be learned. Sebastian wrote, and that's why we need to keep a balance with the games we offer in class, in English classes. Not everybody is good for everybody, for everything, except
I have a question, teacher.
my Noemi.
If it's possible, just in your knowledge, if you have the answer, if the parents of a child already know already know a second language and for example English, it will be easy for the child to learn the second language. Not I don't mind, I don't mean that after the child start to listen, then no, I'm speaking when the baby born, he in the genetic way.
Mhm. What I heard from friends who have that experience because they got married with a foreigner or because one of them was an English teacher is that students not their children uh, learn both languages, but they they decide there is a moment when they have to decide which one is they are going to use. So uh, they understand both languages and they take more time than other children that learn only one language to decide the one that they are going to use. So, but they can learn both languages without any problem. And what I have read is that when children are exposed to languages, um, there is a part of the brain that is developed compared to the brain of a monolingual child. So when children are exposed to two languages, their brain parts developed, some parts of their brain developed, and those parts that are developed help them to learn more languages or help them in other tasks that are important in life. So exposing children to languages is really is really good and positive for them, for their
Very
learning
beneficial.
of everything. Exactly.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Sebastian wrote that some games or activities may cause demotivation. Some students probably don't like all the games that are proposed, so it can happen.
It happened to me today, actually.
What happened?
I proposed a game, and one of the girls was a little bit lost. The others were really engaged and were happy with the game because they were being successful. But one of them was demotivated because she didn't have success. And she said, "No, teacher, I didn't like it." And I said, "You didn't like it because you didn't win." And she said, "Yeah, that's true." So it happens. So you need to be very careful. If the person doesn't like the game or is not good at the game, you should be cautious with that and help her or help him to overcome that sadness or that feeling of not being successful.
That's why teaching in schools is very demanding because it is not the task of the teacher is not just to teach the language, but also to teach behavior, to go through those cases. So how can you help the child to understand that it is important to learn to lose and to win? So that's something that teachers also need to face and teach when they are at a school. It's really demanding. Working at schools is very hard work. It's a hard work. Mayra, please tell us what happened to your school in the place where you work. Mayra? Mayra, do you hear me? Well, Mayra, we can't hear you, so please check your microphone. Probably you can type what happened to you. Okay, so if your microphone is not working, you can type what happened to you in the school where you work. Okay, while Mayra sets her microphone or types what she wants to tell us, we have here other question. Why should learning promote curiosity and pleasure? We actually went through that answer before. What happens when we promote curiosity and pleasure?
Well, when that happens, the students find real motivation. So they are not extrinsically motivated, but intrinsically motivated. And learning is aroused in a very potential way. So they feel successful experiences. They have confidence in themselves, and they go for more. They go for more knowledge, for more uh, beautiful and nice experiences for them to have, and they share what they know. And when they share, um, they make sure. No, they how do you say? Well, they are more. Um, their knowledge, the knowledge that they get, gets more rooted in their brain and in their person. So that's why it's so important. Well,
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons.
Okay, Arle wrote, because the curiosity makes students to be engaged with the class. If they are engaged, they will have a meaningful learning. Okay. Okay. Mayra wrote that some students were exposed to video games, music, or videos of music or TV shows that are not appropriate for their age. And she asked if they were motivated, but she asked if that is okay to expose students to that type of material at the school. So I would say to that type of content. So I would say it is not, because if it is not appropriate for their age, and there are rules at the school that prohibit that, so they shouldn't be exposed to that, at least at the school.
Teacher,
Mm, yes.
for example, when they explore their curiosity, when we give them some option today to increase their curiosity, they can learn easier, and I think that they could get better ways to learn when they are motivated about this. For example, when they are something that I read and I think is interesting is some parts of the brain could be connected with with their pleasure or the sexual pleasure or with the satisfaction when we're eating is
Mhm.
related with things that they develop when they're learning. So I think that is a good tool for us to know. And then we can help them exploring and give them some curiosity. I think is a good option, and we have to take in account that point because I think it's very important and interesting.
Exactly what you said is true according to the reading. The parts of the brain that get active with sexual pleasure or when we eat something we like are the same parts of the brain that get active or activated when we like something that we are studying. So it's the same part. Uh, and again, if those parts are active or get activated, then the information will move to the parts of the brain that are in charge of memory and learning. So, in order to learn, it is not only necessary uh, to use the senses, but it is necessary to like it. So then it is stored in the brain. If we find that that is not important, information is not important, is not meaningful, is boring, if we find out that it is not necessary for our life, we just don't keep it in our mind. We just don't keep it in our brain. So in order to learn it, it needs to be important, interesting, relevant, meaningful, uh, something that we need to use in the future so that it is stored in the brain and therefore it is learned. Otherwise, it will be forgotten. Um, Flor wrote, the combination of curiosity and pleasure is the most powerful weapon of learning. And Sebastian wrote, how do you canalize that curiosity to the right way? What do you mean? I mean, people, children can be curious about anything, and you see that's why they are actually watching and paying attention to everything and discovering new things and trying and they do many things when they are little. So they learn through those experiences something that is good or something that is bad. They need to go through those experiences to find out if they like it or not, if it is good or bad. Okay, here we have other question. What activities can promote curiosity? We have on the screen one, which is to use provoking phrases or pictures. Remember that in the readings we had like some tips when children are not curious for nature. I mean, when they are not, they don't ask questions, but we need to uh, engage them. We can do some things, like, for example, starting the lesson with a provoking phrase or picture. For example, to ask them what they think about wearing a uniform. Do they think that is a sense of belonging, or they think that that loss help them to lose singularity? So that's something that would make them to think uh, to react towards that. Which other tips do you remember?
I think there was another thing that the reading says that we need to take them out to explore the life of things outside because most of the most of the children are learning things now by internet or by television or things like that. And I think that something is important is to take them to explore, to live their real life, and then um, get that curiosity. They can get that curiosity about this and to promote the curiosity. As the read says, is not the same when we are watching or we are looking at a flower in a book or in a screen. Is different when they can to to take contact, or when they have the contact to explore and to see and smell and use different way to explore the life or the world.
Okay, so we can expose them to um, explore through their senses. If they are
Yes.
children, they're teaching little kids, we can do it. To teach, for example, the parts of the school, so we can take them around and ask them to uh, mention what they see, etc. It could be a way. Arley also wrote that using games and letting them ask the questions by themselves through a task. So when we ask them to uh, ask the questions and not we are not the ones that are giving them all the information, that is also a way to uh, engage them and promote curiosity. Data wrote presents a daily problem that leads to awaken students at the beginning of class. So the
Teacher,
reading, yes, Dara, Sharon.
I think curiosity is one of the most important things in children's behavior and learning, because is for saying something when we have babies and they start walking. If you bought a toy, the kid prefer to play with the box and not with the toy. And they figure how to use the box because the boy and the girl can hide herself in there and put the other toys inside, or make a house with the box. So the 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 boy or the girl can figure and create a whole imaginary world in the way they learn how to use the box. And for me, it's kind of same with, for saying something, when we teach language, because they discover how to use it, how to express themselves. And also, if I try to mix the language teaching with a meaningful experience with nature, so they can express themselves by figuring things and matching objects with experiences. So through a project that I can guide them, but the focus for them will be to discover knowledge, to express themselves, to figure things, to solve problems. So I think that curiosity involves several stuff in the acquisition of language or another kind of knowledge.
Yes, what you just mentioned reminds me that that is actually a method used in a school. I forgot exactly the name of the method, but what they do is that they have some games and some objects that they present to the children, but they don't tell them what they have to do. Is what Wilton also mentioned, that we usually tell the students what they have to do and how they have to think. In this method, what teachers do is that they have different games and different activities, and they have them all around the classroom. What they do is to let the students play with that without telling them how. So they have to rearrange some boxes. They have to find out how to put things, how to classify things, how to organize objects that have similar characteristics, etc. But they don't tell them how. They just expose them to those games, and children need to find out the way.
Teacher, and also I know because I was in a Oxford conference these days that when children move and just for saying something round or walk through the classroom or go to another place, I mean they are moving, the oxygen taken by the breathing goes to the brain and makes some chemical process in which the neuron refresh itself, and this oxygen go to the frontal cortex of the brain and make like a wake up activity for the brain. It's a kind of restart. So by movements or making some kind of games in which they have to move, the acquisition of the knowledge improves in a 100% because the oxygen that moves the neurons of the brain. So by touching, by discovering with nature and figure things and doing this kind of activities, they had a meaningful experience.
You are right. So um, the readings also mention that when we combine movement and learning, so it is easier to memorize information. So we don't have to ask students all time to stay quiet while we give all the information. But people need to move. If people need to write down, if they are adults or if they are children, they need to experience with what they are learning in order to help the process happens, help learning happens. Breathing and having some breaks, it's important because, for example, little kids only keep their attention for about 8 or 10 minutes, and adults we keep in our attention for about 25 minutes. So we need to have a break, uh, move a little bit, and then continue. That's something necessary. I found that the name of the method that I told you is Montessori method. That's what they do in the schools. They have that method. They apply that method. Okay, very good, Sharon. Sarah wrote that other tip is to create an atmosphere for dialogue for the students in which they are relaxed. Exactly. So if children feel relaxed, they can ask any question and they will feel pleasure and that will help learning. Liliana wrote, we can start classes in a different way in order to change the activities and show them new and interesting things for them. In this case, we have to know what the students want to know about it. Exactly. Again, if we give students a chance to choose what they want to research or learn, it will be their learning will be more meaningful and more memorable. Sebastian wrote, let's play something, let's breathe and have a break. It also applies for adults. Yep, exactly. We can use curious projects. So that's why projects work a lot. This is one that was also mentioned by Sarah, which is to present a problem. We can start a class by presenting a problem. This one also was mentioned by Sarah, which is to create a relaxing atmosphere. This one has not been mentioned, and is to give students time to organize their ideas and think before they answer. Some of you are in the teacher practicum course too, and that reminds me that when I was watching the videos of your lessons. I found out that some of you don't give students enough time to uh, to organize their ideas. If they are beginners, that will be more difficult for them to talk. So, and some of them are shy. So we need to probably ask them to discuss their answers with their peers, with their classmates, or yes, with the person next to them before we actually have them uh, provide the answer for the whole class. Because if they feel pleasure, if they feel anxiety, they aren't going to learn. So we need to provide the opposite atmosphere. As Arley wrote, sometimes we want them to answer as soon as we ask. Their mental process is slower when they learn something new. That's true. Or when they are beginners and they lack of the structure to answer, so it takes more time for them to organize their ideas. And Raphael wrote to introduce during the class different elements that imply contradiction, surprise, confusion, and uncertainty. Exactly. So that's also a way to have them to call their attention and provoke curiosity, which is this one here. Something innovative, something that has many different answers, something that surprised them, or something contradictory. Any other that you remember from the readings? Any other tip?
Teacher, maybe. Well, I don't. I'm not sure if it is included in the reading, but I remember one important element is to give students a rationale of the activities they are performing. Sometimes students are not involved just because they don't know why they are supposed to do certain activities. So when we give them the rationale, when we tell them why, and they discover that it's something very important and that they're going to use in the activity in the class and maybe for a lifetime, they know that they must do it and they will enjoy it because it's more important. It has meaning for them. It's a meaningful activity. So giving rationale is something uh, paramount in teaching children.
It is Sebastian. Thank you for that information. Yes, if we don't tell them how they can use it in the future, so they probably won't find out the relevance, the importance of the information. So that's very important to do it. Okay, any other tip that you remember?
Reinforce merit, teacher, in order
Exactly.
when students develop a good activity, reinforce them in order to get confident.
Exactly. Very good. Any other? Something that is difficult is to find out the balance between challenging and not very difficult, not very easy exercise. So when we have challenging exercise, that will be positive for them. If the exercise is very easy, they will feel demotivated. It is very difficult. They will feel that they can do it, and that will also make them feel the motivation. Do you guys remember other tip? Okay, this one was already mentioned by someone here tonight, that it is related to having students ask the questions. Okay, let's move to the neuromyths. On the screen you have one which is related to brain capacity, and it says 10%.
Oh, yes, teacher, that surprised me a lot. I thought it was true. I thought we just develop a 10% or use a 10% of our brain capacity, but I didn't know we used 100. Every time we faced a problem or we try to solve something, it's the total capacity that we use in our brain. I didn't know that. That was really interesting for me.
Exactly. So that's the myth. That we can create more connections, more synapses, more yes, more connections among neurons through learning. But as you mentioned, every time we are exposed to a problem, we use the 100% of our capacity to solve it. It doesn't mean that we cannot learn more or we cannot develop other skills. We can't. But every time we do it, we try, we are using the whole uh, capacity of the brain. Do you remember the myth about the amount of information that children can learn?
Yeah, it is said that, well, people say that when you're a child, you can learn a lot just by being exposed to the materials, to the contents, without keeping in mind that children have need to have fun and need to enjoy the experience. So we try to bombard the children with information and content, but they are not acquiring the knowledge because they are not having fun and they are not enjoying the learning process. That's what I understood. I don't know if I'm
That
right.
is true. That is the myth. Okay, what about the myth related to music?
Teacher, that was something that I find interesting
Uh-huh.
because when my daughter was born, a psychologist came to our house and she told us that the Mozart effect was something that it was true. So at that time, I thought it was true, really true. But it was really surprising to me when I wrote that because I'm of course I'm a musician and I know some things, but something that I didn't know that it's not only listening to music, it's not only to say put this song and they will get um, more capacity of in their brain. And now I understood that we can also think about when they play an instrument is a really capacity because they're using different things like rhythm, like expression, like capacity of movement and things like that. So I think that was interesting for me.
Very good.
Teacher, but
Teacher,
also this is related with the myth that when a boy listen classical music all the time start to develop their capacity to understand and have another kind of skills in the way they learn.
Yes, it is related to that. So listening to classical music helps to relax and focus the attention on something that we do with our hands, but it doesn't help to develop special parts of the brain. It helps us to focus the attention. That, as Wilton mentioned, what helps to develop different parts of the brain is actually to learn how to play an instrument. That has also positive effects on the brain as well as learning a new language.
And
Teacher,
even sorry, and even nowadays, is that the Mozart effect is something that most of the people think that is true, and they think that maybe uh, give or put in some music or playing some music, um, their children will get better. And as many or a few days ago, I was talking to a psychologist, and she was telling me that. And I now that I know that that's not true, that isn't true, I I can understand many things about music, because it, there is some options when I teach to play the drum set or violin. Children get better and they develop more things than their parents told me. So from or since my son is playing this or that instrument, he's getting better, or he is better in mathematics, or he's better in, so I now I understand why.
Probably you can share the readings with the psychologist uh,
Yes,
to
yes,
let
yes,
them
yes.
know.
That's
Uh-huh.
something that I think to do, because it is important they know the truth about this.
Teacher, some research claim that there are many cognitive benefits. Um, Cognitive benefits when children listen and play a musical instrument at the same time. For example, the perception, execution, and manipulation of an instrument activate sensory and motor areas. For this reason, children can improve different skills such as attention, perception, discrimination of musical tones, or maybe also increase memory skills. In a magazine, the name is Time Magazine, something like that. I study from the university, Northwestern, I think so, revealed that in order to obtain the cognitive benefits of a music class, kids can just sit there and listen to music. They have to be actively engaged in the music and participation into the class. So this allows to a student motivate and increase the memory skills.
Uh-huh. Yes, so that's why, I mean, the fact of the memories gets better when they play it is because those parts that are in charge of memory are developed when they learn how to play a musical instrument.
Hmm.
That's totally
Okay.
true because I've lived it in my house. I have a daughter, and she was having some difficulties with math and with memorization of some facts in other subjects. And once she started playing violin, she's now in violin classes, practicing regularly. She started to improve in her grades. Not only her grades, but I can now tell that she's better, more confident. She's more active, an active listener. Well, she's better now.
Something that I'm trying to do in my classes is that, for example, when I start the class, I I take a piano and I start playing, and I told my students that please do this, for example, and I have some rhythms on in their legs or in their chest, and they get connected. But it's something that is difficult for them to concentrate about the rhythm they have to do in their claps or something like that, and to sing a song. But when they're when they are aware to or conscious, when they are at that moment, they they start to 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 engage, and then at the next class they show me how to do it, and they are connected with the class about this is something that I start to do a few classes because I'm just studying like a teacher English.
Mm, interesting.
Or
Okay. Do you guys remember other myths? I have here two more. One is related with the hemispheres of the brain.
something that I think I read was that the brain almost or most of the people think that when we are doing something is have to be with a specific part of the brain, but that's totally wrong because the the retest that it wasn't or it's not like that. That's not true because really when we are doing many things we are mm, connecting our parts or both parts of the brain, and most of the people think that just for example when we are say, doing something like mathematics or art or music it have to be with a specific part of the brain. That could be true, but no totally, because there are some some things that uh, they are connecting all the time where they do uh, art or when they make some things like art or music or things like that. I don't know if I'm right, but
You're
I
right.
think something
That is the myth,
I
exactly.
read.
So we see some children are very good at, for example, creating things or playing an instrument, but it doesn't mean that they only use that part of the brain. But as you mentioned, brain is connected all the time, both sides. So every time we do something, we use both sides of the brain. It doesn't mean that we develop only one. We just tend to be more, uh, we tend to be more or create either creative or more analytical. But anyway, we use both parts when we do something. As Joanna wrote, both parts work together. Exactly. And what about this myth regarding learning two languages at the same time? What is the myth?
Maybe a teacher. I don't know if I'm right, but I read something about that. Um, People think that children can learn only after they start with the mother language,
Uh-huh.
and then they can start to learn another language, and that isn't true because they can start learning from when or before they was born or
Exactly.
were
So
born and something like that.
that is the myth, exactly. So it is not necessary to learn first the mother tongue and then the second language or a foreign language. Children can learn both at the same time, and they are not going to get confused. They are going to develop other types, other parts of the brain, which are going to be very positive for their future. And as I mentioned before, probably they will take more time than monolingual children to start talking while they decide the language that they will use. But they can learn both at the same time. And they are not going to get confused.
Is there only two languages or as many languages as we are exposed to?
They can learn many, and they are
Okay.
not going to get confused. Children, I mean.
Great.
Babies. They can be exposed to different languages and they are not going to get confused. They will take a little bit more time than a monolingual child to produce, to start talking, but they will learn the languages he will be or she will be exposed to.
That's maybe why people believe that they get confused because they start talking or producing orally later in life. Maybe.
Yeah, actually, uh, that's what happens. Yes, that they, as I mentioned, the research says that they develop other parts of the brain that monolingual children don't develop, and that's going to be good for future learning. Giancarlo wrote, I have a lot of multilingual friends who learned their languages when they were kids from their parents and other sources. So I have seen that in action to be truth. Exactly. I also have heard about friends of mine who talk to their children in English because one of the parents was an English teacher and the kid learned both languages. Or, as I mentioned before, because friends of mine have married a foreigner, so their children learn Spanish and the other language. Okay, very good. Do you guys have questions? Do you want to add something before we finish?
Not a question, teacher. Only a comment about that. I think that the reading was very, very interesting because we learned that in my case, I believed in many of those myths about the learning process, and it was a good tool for me to because give me some strategies about what kind of games or what kind of activities can I do. I can do with our students in order to motivate them and to approach their curiosity. And the most important thing that we, not only the students, but also we as the teachers and all kind of people, we learn and we love the knowledge if it is significant for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, Flor. Thanks for your comment. We have one virtual encounter next week before we finish the course. So I'll upload the feedback of your tasks by next Wednesday. So so you have some days to check them and tell me if there is anything wrong with the grades. So we will have the last encounter next Wednesday, and if you have questions about the grades, we can discuss them in the virtual encounter. Okay?
So teacher, excuse me, our last task is for this week?
Yes, it's the one that you are doing this week.
Okay. And for the next virtual encounter, we are going to solve things about the grades and that's it?
No, we are going also to discuss the readings that you are doing this week.
Got it.
Good. Well, thank you a lot, all of you, for joining the encounter, for your participation. And I'm going to change, like you said, the screen for the ones that move to the teacher practicum to virtual encounter, and for that encounter we will start at 8:05. Okay, so we have some time to stretch out.
Okay, teacher, thank you very much.
Thank you and bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, teacher. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sí, 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 sí. Pero